Okay, so I wanted to talk about saturated niches and how they present what I think is the best opportunity to make actual great money from publishing books through KDP without having to publish hundreds and hundreds of books. But as someone that creates content to a decent sized audience at this point, I have what I feel is an obligation to apply some reality behind this opportunity. So what I'm going to be doing in today's video is taking a look at some of the stats for just one of the coloring books that is in a very saturated niche that I've had published recently. So I'm going to be taking a look at things like how long it took me to have it made, how much it cost, how much I spent to get it ranked, how much I spent to get it maintained, what type of click prices I'm getting, the best type of campaigns that I ran, how many campaigns I kept running, the niche criteria, the book cover cost, the interior cost, etc, etc. And this is just going to be a video packed full of stats so that you can get an idea of what it takes to enter into these niches and what the rewards are for doing so. And at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about the amount of sales that book has made, because it is actually ranked under 1,000 in the US store and under 600 in the UK store at the moment. So this is a rare moment on YouTube that you're actually going to be given some real figures of sales for a book that has a very low BSR. So you know those videos where people type a book BSR into a calculator, then get all excited because someone's potentially making $10,000 a month. I think you're going to be surprised at the reality here, so make sure that you stay tuned for these stats. Okay, so before we get into the stats of this video, I'm going to have to preface everything here with a note on quality. So the good stuff is going to come right after this, I promise, but just listen up for now. You have to understand your book quality, and that's going to be relevant to the stats that I'm showing off here. Okay, so I know it's so tiring to hear about people say quality over quantity, but typically this is not something that you can recognize on your first few attempts at publishing books unless you're a graphic designer, for example, or if you've got prior publishing experience, which isn't going to be the case for most of us. Most people who are new to KDP don't know what high quality is, or they think they do, but they can't come to terms with the fact that they're just not that good at something, because I think we do have a very emotional attachment to anything that we create, and it is sometimes hard to recognize that maybe what we have created isn't so good. So that comes with time for most people. It's that time and experience that will lead to quality. So just very quickly before we get into these very interesting stats, let's just talk about the quality before we proceed here. Okay, so this is an absolute necessity in my opinion before I talk about the stats involved with such a book. So how do I create quality? Now this is kind of weird because you always hear people say to focus on your quality over your quantity, but it's, in my opinion, it's one of the most pointless statements that you can make unless you're setting yourself up for producing quality, because otherwise it's just a meaningless word, right? And quality is important, more important than ever when it comes to these really saturated competitive niches. Okay, so when I enter into these niches, I become the most deluded person on the planet. I go into it genuinely thinking that I'm going to try and create a book that can become the best-selling book on Amazon. Now obviously that's complete nonsense and it's never going to happen, but when you aim extremely high with your books, you're going to end up creating something pretty awesome anyway. And the book that I created is kind of like just one of those generic pattern books. It's in a really mega competitive niche, but going into it with the attitude that it's going to be the best that Amazon's ever seen in a niche. Okay, and I'm going into the attitude and going into things with that attitude. It changes the production process to the point where you have to create an amazing book. And the other thing here, when it comes to these type of books, I have to be, me personally, I have to be somewhat interested in the project. Now I'm not talking about being passionate to that extent, but I really like publishing coloring books and building the brand. Okay, so that's a big factor for me anyway. So I always say that you should go where money is being spent and not focusing on your passion, and I stand by that 100%. But for a substantial project, you're going to want to be excited and motivated to do it, and just, you know, and to try and envision that feeling of what a customer is going to feel when they receive your amazing books. So I'd say you should create books where you're willing to put effort, if that makes sense, and not necessarily following your passion. Okay, so for me, I don't think I've completed a coloring book page since I was maybe 9 years old. I'm not sure, but at the same time, like, I absolutely love producing coloring books for other people, right? So I'm not passionate about coloring books, but that's where I'm willing to put my effort, if that makes sense. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get into the finer details and take a look at the cost, production time, ads, etc., etc. All these juicy stats that you came to this video to see. Okay, so let's start with the production time. Okay, so the amount of time it took for the idea to materialize into a fully live published book on Amazon. So I started discussing this project with my designer about 3 weeks before the book went live, and I get quite a lot of comments saying that I take too long to make books, but there has 100% a direct correlation between the production time and the end product quality. So that time, it includes the niche research, correcting the errors, making changes, being lazy, making A+ content, double, triple, quadruple checking the interiors before uploading it, writing the description, having back and forth with my designer, and things like that. So I would say it took around 3 weeks to create this book in a very competitive niche. Okay, so let's take a look at my niche criteria for these. I'm going to keep calling them saturated niches, but these are just competitive niches. Okay, so my niche criteria for a competitive niche, and I'm going to go over to Amazon, just give an example in a second here, but basically I look for a few independently published books on the first page that have a ranking under 1,000. Okay, the second criteria here is that it has to be something that I can have creative input with and make better or different. Okay, so obviously that is really easy when it comes to coloring books. There's not one set way of doing something, and that's it pretty much. That is my niche criteria. There are a few like finer details that you could get into, but those are the two things that matter for me. I want to make sure there is a ton of traffic, because if I'm putting X amount of money into this project, and I want to make damn sure that if I'm on the first page, there's going to be a ton of people looking for my book and potentially buying it. Okay, so I just come across to Amazon here and give you a quick example now of a typically saturated, really competitive niche, anxiety coloring books for adults. Now, just to clarify here, I personally would not make an anxiety coloring book. I don't think that's a real niche. I suppose it could be, but at the same time, I don't think you should make anything that claims to help with anxiety or stress relief or anything like that. Okay, so this is just an example of a typically competitive market that you could get into. So I've got my BSR extension that shows everything. If you don't have that, it's DS Amazon Quick View. You've probably got it already. But this is the extent of the niche research when it comes to like really competitive niches. So most people will tell you not to touch these type of niches because they're so competitive. But basically what I'm looking for is independently published books like this one here that have a ranking of under 1,000. So you want to find like a couple of them, or that sort of near 1,000. Okay, so 228 is obviously under 1,000. 1,300 is pretty close. And if we just scroll through here to see if we can find any others, so we've got 760, 200, 490, 290, etc., etc. Okay, so there's tons of books here that have under 1,000, and it's obvious. You should be able to look at this and say, yes, this search term has got a ton of people actively buying books in, but at the same time, it's obviously going to be extremely competitive. Okay, so that's one of the main criteria, is that it has a load of traffic going to it. Okay, so the other criteria was that I could have some creative input. So when I'm communicating between when I'm communicating with my freelancer, the person that does the images for the books, I want to be able to say to them, look, I want to have this, and we could do it in a certain way. I like this person's style. Obviously, we're not going to copy anyone, but I kind of like, this is what I like. Can you sort of make something around that? Etc, etc. Okay, so you get the point here. And it's strange because you hear it all the time that you can't enter into niches where there are, the top players that have hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of reviews and really low BSRs. And you hear people saying that you shouldn't publish in niches that have a BSR of under 10,000, for example. And I don't understand why that is, because when you take a look at the rest of the stats for how much money they've actually spent, you realize that you can actually get ranked on first pages for these type of search terms without having to spend that much money. So the whole thing that people do, where they have this really complex criteria that you need to have X amount of books on the first page that don't have any reviews on them, is nonsense in my opinion. It's just so ridiculous. But whatever. And I can hand on heart, I can tell you that all the niches that I enter, no matter what the competition, I do not care at all how many reviews that they have. Okay, I mean, it's nice that if you can see some books that have got low to no reviews on the front page, but whatever, if you make a crazy book in a crazy niche and you get onto the front page, you're gonna make sales. Okay, so let's move on and talk about niche research just very quickly. So for any project, I spend on and off about a week doing niche research. So that involves you're finding what keywords I'm going to be targeting, what the audience like and don't like. So you can check out reviews of other books to see what people like and they don't like, the page amount, the minimum sort of page amount that you want to aim for, typical pricing, how I can make my book different. And I'm aware that some of this might seem overkill, but keep in mind, if you're working on multiple projects and businesses, you'll find that this time does soon add up. And also the reward at the end of it all is what you have to think of. You think like, if you're putting this time in, and trust me, like your audience, what they want is so important. So actually putting a week of effort into doing the research is nothing really, and the rewards from that are going to be quite substantial, which I'm going to show you very, very soon. Okay, so let's talk more the money side of things now. How about the book cover cost? So for all my book covers that are in the for coloring books, we take a page from the interior and have it colored by the person that drew it. So they managed to do that in about 30 to 40 minutes, and I pay them around $30 to do that. Okay, so they're really good at doing it. It's worth the money, and it's hard to know whether this seems like a lot of money for some people or not enough. It's but it is what it is. I think $30 for 30 minutes of work is typically quite good. Same goes for the interior cost. So the interior cost me around $250. Again, they do these pretty quickly, but the quality is really high, and it has that kind of wholesome, I care about who colors these images in type feel. You know, none of that AI looking stuff. So I've hired them from Upwork. I've been working with them for about a year. So what I'll do is I'll provide them with a document with everything that I want for each page. Okay, so that's what I'm doing during the niche research period, is writing everything down that I want them to do. Okay, so you know, they can't just come up with everything you want without you giving them the direction. Okay, so we kind of do like a test page first, then I make up the entire document. I send it to them with the ideas in it, and then away they go basically. And if we need any changes, what we do is we just start a new contract on Upwork for the changes, which is like $50 to $100. And obviously it depends on the job, but typically I make around $50 worth of changes. Okay, so let's get into the bit you've probably just been waiting to see, and that is how much money that one book has made in a competitive niche. Okay, so let's come over to my beautiful slideshow here that I've created in Canva. So the estimated royalties, which is pretty accurate, obviously, between February the 16th and March the 8th, is that today? March 8th, I think it's today, is $1,745. Okay, so that is the amount that I've made from this one book since February the 16th. Okay, so that's just about when it went live. I think maybe it went, technically it was showing as like January the 30th, but it didn't go live until the 16th because I didn't release it until, I didn't put it into review until like the 13th of February maybe, so it's around that time basically. But I think you'll agree, you know, that's a good amount of money. So let's take a look at the costs now involved with this. So we've gone over the book cover, which was like $30, the interior, which was maybe $250, but we'll add it all up at the end. But let's take a look at some of the ad stats now. So let's go over to the next page here and take a look at the total ad spend. And obviously this is just snipped out of my account. I couldn't go into my account to show this one because the name of the campaigns is the exact name of the book, so that would be not very smart. But I will go into my campaigns and into my dashboard just so you can see that the book is actually real. So the total spend was $209 between that period. The ACoS is 55% with 84 orders. So how many campaigns did I create for this book? Okay, so I end up doing a total of 15 campaigns, and obviously I've had to hide the name of the campaigns because I don't know why I've named it the exact name of the book this time. But total number of 15 campaigns. We've got a ton of different campaigns here with different daily budgets and all sorts. So we've got like product targeting, auto campaigns, manual campaigns, and as you can see, the ACoS is all over the place here. Different daily budgets, and you know, the $209 of spend with 84 sales. Okay, so moving on to the amount that I had to spend and the number of sales that I needed to get in order to get ranked. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why I don't think people need to shy away from if you have some money to invest, you don't need to shy away, and you don't need to set a criteria where you're avoiding niches that have got lots and lots and lots of competition and traffic, because you don't need to spend that much. So what I found was that I spent just under $50. So obviously that's not the entire spend. This is a little bit hard to explain, but I was tracking at what point the book was on the first page. Okay, so it wasn't at the top of the first page, but it was like middle toward the bottom of the first page after $48 to spend. Okay, so 41% ACOS and 24 orders. Okay, so that's the sales, the amount that the number of sales that I needed to get onto the first page in a very competitive niche was around 24. Okay, it might have been sooner than that, but you know, you have to get sales to get onto the front page for these type of niches. Okay, so moving on, we have the best type of campaigns that I was running to these books. Okay, so I'm talking in terms of what the best click price was, because that seems to be the thing that most people get frustrated by, is not getting good clicks. Okay, so I managed to get a 21 cent click campaign here. So this was for an auto campaign that had a down only section. Okay, so it was a 23 cent down only auto campaign. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which was a 10 cent auto campaign up and down. Okay, so this one obviously didn't get as many clicks and orders, but it's one of those campaigns you can just leave it going because the ACOS is quite good and it's still getting those really cheap clicks of 13 cents. Okay, so this is in really competitive niches. Okay, so when people say you can't get these type of clicks, you definitely can. You definitely can. You just have to put out a lot of campaigns and keep testing different things. Okay, so the other type, the third best campaign I had was a 10 cent up and down product targeting. Okay, so ignore the names of these, they're not going to make any sense because of the way that I do it. But this one, we had 173 clicks with 19 orders. The ACOS is 23%. Okay, so that's a product targeting, which is 10 cent up and down biddings. Okay, so let's take a look at what the overall profit for this book is going to be. I'm going to do worst case scenario here because I don't have the time or desire to go through the absolute fine details of it all. So we have the 1,768, which I'll round down to 1,700. Obviously, some people are going to want to see that this is actually live in my account. I will show the earnings for this month just so you can see that it's actually real and happening. So one selected book between 1st of March and 8th March is $850 of profit so far, $850 of sales so far this month. Okay, so like I say, the total amount was 1,700. We spent, it wasn't $300 on ads, but let's just go ahead and say that it was. The interior and the cover, let's say 400. Again, it probably, I don't think it was that high. It was probably closer to 300 actually, but we're doing worst case scenario. So in around 3 weeks, we're looking at a profit of $1,000, which is really good, right? Okay, so that's pretty impressive. Okay, so I can already feel that some people are kind of sweating and feeling a bit, I have to spend $700 to get a good book. You know, I've been very lazy and not added this up correctly. The reality is that it is probably closer to $400, and the other reality here is that this is proportionate to the niche and proportionate to what I'm willing to spend on ad campaigns and what I'm willing to pay someone when it comes to their illustrations. Okay, so this is all relevant to me. This is what I feel like is the amount that I'm happy to pay while sort of feeling comfortable paying that amount. You know, I don't feel like I'm paying too much. I don't feel like I'm underpaying anyone or anything like that for the time it takes people to do the work. And obviously I'm taking my aggressive ad campaigns into consideration as well. So you don't have to go that aggressive with your ad campaigns. You don't have to spend $400 on an interior and a cover. Like, everyone has different resources that they can use. This is what I'm showing you. This is my KDP journey that I'm presenting to you in the way that I'm doing things. I'm hiring someone, so obviously that's going to involve spending money. But people, of course, you have different resources where you can get your interiors. You might be able to do it yourself. Like, this is down to you. I don't cover that on my channel because I just don't. I don't talk about things that I don't do, basically. So this is the way that I do things, and you know, this is what I feel that it takes to make great sales in competitive niches. So I just want to give you some perspective here. If I had to start over, would I rather spend 6 months to a year uploading low content books like notebooks and planners using free resources to maybe eventually have enough money to invest into bigger projects? Or would I rather find a way where I could safely invest into bigger projects sooner? So I'm talking about, working for a few weeks, or not going out, or cancelling pointless subscriptions, and just saving that money for real projects so that I can do it sooner. For me, 100%, I'd rather save the money and invest it, because producing tons of books in low content niches, it is really time consuming, and the risk is still high that you are still going to be entering into competitive niches with your notebooks, your journals, your planners. It's all going to be quite competitive unless you're niching down, of course. So you could end up wasting a lot of your life. And with money to invest, you're gonna find things out quicker. You're gonna make mistakes quicker, and you're gonna have success quicker. Okay. And I must apologize here. Like, I'm not trying to make enemies here, as I'm aware that a lot of people start KDP because they don't have the money, or they don't have the means to make that money. But it would just be terrible for me to sit here and say that if you have no money and no skill, you can still make thousands a month in these competitive niches, because it's so unlikely. And I just think you really have to build your way up to these type of projects instead of potentially wasting your life. And that's why the KDP journey, it really matters so much, because I would never have been able to risk $400 on a project 2 or 3 years ago. So during that point, I'd be spending less. I'd be doing more things myself. I didn't run as many ad campaigns. I didn't do any aggressive ad campaigns. I didn't try and get into competitive niches, and just let things build up to the point where I could do that. So it's not something to feel disheartened over if you're not in a position at the moment to take on bigger niches. And honestly, like I say, $400 was maybe, it's on the higher side of things. And if I had to put a number on what an average person could spend on, an activity book, or a coloring book, or something, a medium content book, I'd say like $200 to $300. So if you don't have that type of budget, you have a smaller budget, then niching down is always going to be your best friend here. Okay. But of course, when you niche down, you're going to be targeting a smaller audience, and you're going to get proportionate sales, of course, typically anyway. So think of it this way: the more competitive the niches are, the more traffic that these niches have going to them, the more money you're going to have to spend. Because really, in my opinion, there just aren't niches left that have tons and tons and tons and tons of traffic going to them, but hardly any competition. Like, it's not been that way for as long as I can remember, and I've been doing this for a very, very long time at this point. And you have to accept that if you're going to be going into these niches. So that's pretty much it. This is what I think is the reality when it comes to selling in really competitive niches. And if you feel like this has helped you and sort of shone some light here upon the reality, then I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel, because I have got plenty more videos coming out this year. But anyway, that's it for this video. I shall see you next Wednesday.